Session of the 17th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator Gregorio Bihonasan II will lead us in prayer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Father Almighty, grant that the coming change may address the need for unity, peace, and a better life for our people. Give us the collective will and sense of purpose that we may overcome the challenges facing our country during these trying times. Please do not allow passions and divisiveness to distract us from dialogue, reason, and compassion as we work to repair damaged institutions and focus on the difficult task of nation building. All this we ask in your holy name. Amen.
Amen. Secretary, please call the roll.
Roll call members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano, De Lima, Drilon, Ejercito, Escudero, Gatsalian, Gordon, Honasan, Ontiveros, Lacson, Ligarda, Pacquiao, Pangilinan, Po, Recto, Soto, Trillanes, Villanueva, Villar, Zubiri, Senate President Pimentel.
With 21 senators present, the chair declares the presence of a quorum. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 9th Session, Tuesday, August 15, and consider the same as approved.
9th session, Monday, August 15, 2016.
Yes, Monday.
Yes.
No, sorry. August 15, 9th session, Monday.
Monday, yes, sir. Yes. Is there any objection to the motion? There being none, the motion is approved.
Mr. President, we have some guests in the gallery. We'd like to acknowledge them. These guests are making the Senate President and Sherwin Gatchalian think about their bachelor days. Kaya nga, your bachelor days. Rethinking. We have Ms. Riza Lau, chair and founder of the Miss Global Tourism Philippines Foundation Incorporated, together with Miss Global 2015, Jessica Pearls, and Miss Global 2016, Camille Hiro, and the tourism ambassadors, Mr. President. I'd like to welcome them to the Senate.
Welcome to our beautiful guests, the guests of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Welcome to the Senate.
After seeing the ladies, Mr. President, it is not true that Senator Gordon is filing a bill for the approval of divorce. It is not true, Mr. President. Mr. President, we'd like to acknowledge also Vice Mayor Jennifer Cruz of Pola, Oriental Mindoro.
Welcome to the Vice Mayor.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
Is there any objection? There being none, the motion is approved. Secretary, please read the reference of business.
901, an act exempting from tax all allowances and benefits granted to public school teachers, including those in the state colleges and universities. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
Refer to the Committees on Ways and Means and Education, Arts and Culture.
902, an act strengthening the participation of civil society organizations in the formulation of national, regional, and local development plan and for other purposes. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
903, an act mandating the government to provide access to information on food and other basic commodities to guarantee the right of the people to affordable food and adequate food supply, prescribing guidelines therefore and for other purposes. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship.
904, an act instituting the Magna Carta of Filipino Seafarers. Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development and Foreign Relations.
905, an act banning the catching, sale, purchase, possession, transportation, importation, and exportation of all sharks, and raise of any part thereof in the country, Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Environment and Natural Resources.
906, an act providing scholarship grants to students enrolling in the teacher education and providing incentives for teaching in public schools. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Ways and Means and Finance.
907, an act providing for instructional materials allowance for public school teachers. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture and Finance.
908, an act regulating the operation and maintenance of internet, cafes, or computer rental shops and other establishments offering computer services to minors, providing penalties for violation thereof and for other purposes. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship and Local Government.
909, an act increasing the penalties for other illegal gambling activities, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 9287 entitled an act increasing the penalties for illegal numbers games, amending certain provisions of Presidential Decree number 1602 and for other purposes. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Games and Amusement and Justice and Human Rights.
910, an act mandating inclusion of elected and appointed barangay officials as compulsory members of the government service insurance system, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1146 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Government Service Insurance Act of 1977. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Government, Corporations and Public Enterprises and Local Government.
911, an act amending sections 69, 261, CC, and 264 of Batas Pambansa bilang 881, otherwise known as the Omnibus Election Code of the Philippines as amended, and for other purposes. Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
912, an act to include ethnic origin in the national survey conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Cultural Communities and Finance.
913, an act establishing the People's Broadcasting Corporation, abolishing the People's Television Network Incorporated, and for other purposes. Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Public Services, Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Ways and Means and Finance.
914, an act promoting sustainable and alternative modes of transportation and other mobility options. Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Public Services and Environment and Natural Resources.
915, an act strengthening the National Museum of the Philippines, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 8492, otherwise known as the National Museum Act of 1998, and appropriating funds therefore. Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Ways and Means and Finance.
916, an act providing for a comprehensive nursing law towards equality healthcare system, appropriating funds therefore. Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Health and Demography and Finance.
917, an act establishing the Filipino Identification System, providing funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
918, an act supporting the production of Filipino films by providing grants to filmmakers who are given honors in notable international film competitions and festivals. Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media and Finance.
919, an act increasing the allowable personal exemption of individual taxpayers, amending for the purpose Section 35A of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
920, an act enhancing revenue administration and collection by granting an amnesty on all unpaid internal revenue taxes imposed by the national government for taxable year 2015 and prior years. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
921, an act exempting books, newspapers, magazines, journals, reviews, bulletins, and other educational or learning materials made or published in digital or electronic format from value-added tax, amending for the purpose Section 1091 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
922, an act exempting membership fees and other assessments, charges collected by condominium corporations from value-added tax, amending for the purpose Section 1091 of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
923, an act lowering the tax rate on capital gains from the sale, exchange, or other disposition of real property, amending for the purpose Sections 24D 1 and 27D 5 of Republic Act Number 8424, otherwise known as the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
924, an act reducing electricity rates by allocating the net national government share from the Malampaya Natural Gas Project for the payment of the stranded contract costs and stranded debts of the National Power Corporation. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Finance and Energy.
925, an act exempting green vehicles from the motor vehicles usage charge, amending for the purpose Section 2 of Republic Act Number 8794, otherwise known as the Motor Vehicle Usage Charge Act of 2000. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Public Works and Ways and Means.
926, an act establishing lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender help and protection desks in all Philippine National Police stations nationwide, amending for the purpose Title 7 of Republic Act Number 8551 as amended, otherwise known as the Philippine National Police Reform and Reorganization Act of 1998, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
927, an act establishing the fiscal regime and revenue sharing arrangement for large-scale metallic mining, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Ways and Means and Environment and Natural Resources.
928, an act decriminalizing libel, repealing for this purpose Articles 353, 354, 355, 356, 357, 360, 361, and 362 of Act Number 3815 as amended, otherwise known as the Revised Penal Code, and Section 4C4, Chapter 2 of Republic Act Number 10175, otherwise known as the Cybercrime Prevention Act of 2012. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
929, an act ensuring access to secondary education by converting all public elementary schools into integrated schools offering complete basic education, and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
930, an act providing medical scholarships to qualified students in all municipalities, establishing for this purpose the One Town, One Doctor Scholarship Program, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes. Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Education, Arts and Culture, and Finance.
931, an act reducing the civil penalties and interest imposed on the failure to file tax returns and pay the tax due thereon, amending for this purpose Sections 248 and 249A of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended. Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
932, an act to further improve government service delivery, amending for the purpose Section 8 of Republic Act number 9485, otherwise known as the Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007, Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
933, an act rationalizing the economic regulation of water utilities, creating the Water Regulatory Commission, and for other purposes, Senator Recto.
To the Committees on Public Services, Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
934, an act establishing the Coconut Farmers Trust Fund and providing for its management and utilization, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
935, an act prohibiting discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity or expression and providing penalties, therefore, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committee on Women, Children, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
936, an act establishing an on-site, in-city or near-city resettlement program for informal settler families and in connection therewith mandating that local government units provide livelihood assistance and other basic services, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 7279 as amended, otherwise known as the Urban Development and Housing Act of 1992, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, and Local Government.
937, an act creating a Department of Ocean, Fisheries, and Aquatic Resources, providing for its powers and functions, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Risa Hontiveros.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food, Civil Service, Government Organization, and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
938, an act providing for the protection, security, and benefits of whistleblowers, appropriating funds therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
939, an act to strengthen the Laguna Lake Development Authority, repealing for the purpose Republic Act number 4850 as amended, otherwise known as the Laguna Development Authority Act of 1966, and for other purposes, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Economic Affairs, Ways and Means, and Finance.
940, an act establishing a National Science High School in the city of San Juan, to be known as the San Juan City National Science High School, and appropriating funds, therefore, Senator Joseph Victor Ejercito.
To the Committee on Rules.
941, an act amending Section 23 of Republic Act number 4136, otherwise known as the Land Transportation and Traffic Code, Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committee on Public Services.
942, an act enhancing administration and collection by granting an amnesty on all unpaid internal revenue taxes imposed by the national government for taxable year 2015 and prior years by Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
943, an act providing for a new passport law, repealing Republic Act number 8239, otherwise known as the Philippine Passport Act of 1996, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Foreign Relations.
944, an act declaring Pag-asa Island cluster in the municipality of Kalayaan, province of Palawan, as an ecotourism destination and protected area, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Environment and Natural Resources, Tourism, and Finance.
945, an act institutionalizing the grant of student fare discount privileges on land, water, air, and rail transport utilities, and for other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Public Services, and Ways and Means.
946, an act mandating higher education institutions and technical vocational institutions to ensure the safety and security of the academic community from internal and external threats, thereby creating a crime prevention committee for this purpose and for other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, and Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
947, an act providing for rural employment assistance program and appropriating funds therefore, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development, Local Government, and Finance.
948, an act prohibiting discrimination on the basis of age, racial or ethnic origin, religious belief or activity, political inclination or conviction, social class, sex, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity and expressions, marital or relationship status, disability, HIV status, health status, or medical history, language, physical features, and other status, and providing penalties, therefore, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Cultural Communities and Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development.
949, an act providing for the protection, security, and benefits of whistleblowers, appropriating funds, therefore, and for other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
950, an act authorizing wiretapping in cases involving violations of Republic Act Number 9165, otherwise known as the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, amending for the purpose Section 3 of Republic Act Number 42,000 entitled An Act to Prohibit and Penalize Wiretapping and other related violations of the privacy of communication and for other purposes, Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
Additional reference to business bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 951, an act promoting and authorizing public-private partnerships for the financing, construction, operation, and maintenance of infrastructure facilities, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Public Works, Economic Affairs, Ways and Means, and Finance.
952, an act creating the Department of Housing and Urban Development, defining its mandates, powers, and functions, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Angara.
To the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
953, an act to strengthen the Office of the Government Corporate Council by redefining, expanding, strengthening, rationalizing, and further professionalizing its organization, upgrading employee benefits, and appropriating funds therefore, by Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, and Finance.
954, an act amending Section 6 of Republic Act Number 1379, otherwise known as the Forfeiture Law, to provide a fixed percentage of the value of forfeited properties in corruption cases as additional funding for the Office of the Ombudsman and for other purposes, by Senator Angara.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
955, an act increasing the hazard payable personnel of the Armed Forces of the Philippines to 25% of their base pay and providing funds therefore, by Senator Angara.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
956, an act providing for benefits to military dependents, creating the Military Dependents Welfare Office, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Angara.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Finance.
957, an act providing for investment incentives to accelerate development in Mindanao, creating the Mindanao Incentives Development Authority for this purpose and for other purposes, by Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committees on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Economic Affairs, Ways and Means, and Finance.
958, an act to strengthen the country's gross international reserves, amending for the purpose Sections 32 and 151 of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended and for other purposes, by Senator Sani Angara.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
959, an act redefining the crime of syndicated staffa, amending for the purpose Section 1 of Presidential Decree Number 1689 by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
To the Committee on Justice and Human Rights.
960, an act prohibiting black sand mining in the Philippines, providing penalties therefore and for other purposes, by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
To the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources.
961, an act redefining the crime of illegal recruitment committed by a syndicate, amending for the purpose Article 38 of Presidential Decree 442, otherwise known as the Labor Code of the Philippines as amended, and Section 6 of Republic Act Number 8042, otherwise known as the Migrant Workers and Overseas Filipinos Act of 1995 as amended by Senator Laila M. De Lima.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development and Foreign Relations.
962, an act providing for a full tuition subsidy for students enrolled in state universities and colleges and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture and Finance.
963, an act amending Sections 2 and 3 of Republic Act Number 8187, otherwise known as the Paternity Leave Act of 1996 by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development and Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation.
964, an act integrating voter education in the junior and senior high school curricula by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture and Electoral Reforms and People's Participation.
965, an act providing for a comprehensive nursing law towards quality health care system and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Health and Demography and Finance.
966, an act declaring Filipino Sign Language as the national sign language of the Philippine deaf and the official language of government in all transactions involving the deaf and mandating its use in schools, broadcast media, and workplaces by Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance.
967, an act requiring the use of Filipino Sign Language insets for local news programs, amending for the purpose Section 22 of Republic Act Number 7277 as amended, otherwise known as the Magna Carta for Persons with Disabilities by Senator Bam Aquino IV.
To the Committees on Public Information and Mass Media and Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development.
968, an act establishing social welfare attaches and for other purposes by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committees on Labor, Employment and Human Resources Development, Foreign Relations and Finance.
969, an act institutionalizing industry cluster-based programs and projects through interlocal cooperation and people's participations by Senator Joel Villanueva.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Local Government and Ways and Means.
970, an act amending Republic Act Number 7719, an act promoting voluntary blood donation, providing for an adequate supply of safe blood, regulating blood banks, and providing penalties for violation thereof, otherwise known as the National Blood Services Act of 1994 and for other purposes by Senator Richard J. Gordon.
To the Committee on Health and Demography.
971, an act to further professionalize the police service, amending for the purpose pertinent provisions of Republic Act Number 6975 as amended by Republic Act 8551 and for other purposes by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
972, an act establishing a free medicine assistance program for the poor and providing funds therefore by Senator Sonny Angara.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development and Finance.
973, an act providing for a comprehensive nursing law towards quality health care system and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Sonny Angara.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation, Health and Demography and Finance.
974, an act institutionalizing the poverty reduction through social entrepreneurship program promoting social enterprises with the poor as primary stakeholders by Senator Sonny Angara.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Social Justice, Welfare and Rural Development and Finance.
975, an act prescribing the mechanism to facilitate the disposition of idle government-owned lands for socialized housing by Senator Sonny Angara.
To the Committees on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement and Ways and Means.
976, an act to further strengthen the Office of the Solicitor General, amending for the purpose Republic Act Number 9417 and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Sonny Angara.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance.
977, an act strengthening the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1467 as amended, otherwise known as the Charter of the Philippine Crop Insurance Corporation by Senator Sana Angara.
To the Committees on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises, Agriculture and Food, and Finance.
978, an act establishing resource centers for indigenous cultural communities / indigenous peoples to enhance and ensure delivery of essential services, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Sonia Angara.
To the Committees on Cultural Communities and Finance.
979, an act imposing a 6-year moratorium on the increase of all government fees and charges by Senator Recto.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
980, an act amending sections 84, 86, 89, and 97 of Title III, Chapter 1, Estate Tax of the National Internal Revenue Code of 1997 as amended by Senator Angara.
To the Committee on Ways and Means.
981, an act institutionalizing the use of bicycles and alternative mode of transportation, establishing appropriate infrastructure and facilities, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Grace Poe.
To the Committees on Public Services, Public Works, and Finance.
982, an act amending sections 8 and 9 of Republic Act number 9485, otherwise known as the Anti-Red Tape Act of 2007 by Senator Lacson.
To the Committee on Civil Service, Government Reorganization, and Professional Regulation.
983, an act promoting integrated urban agriculture and vertical farming to address food security concerns and to provide livelihood opportunities, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Agriculture and Food and Finance.
984, an act providing for a system of redistributing and recycling food waste to promote food security by Senator Pangilinan.
To the Committees on Health and Demography, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, Ways and Means, and Finance.
985, an act allowing the imposition of the death penalty for heinous crimes involving child trafficking, exploitation, prostitution, pornography, and rape by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Justice and Human Rights, and Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes.
986, an act abolishing the Road Board and transferring its powers and functions to the Department of Public Works and Highways to the Department of Transportation, amending for the purpose Republic Act number 8794, otherwise known as the Motor Vehicles Users Charge by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Public Works and Public Services.
987, an act providing for an increase in the salary of the personnel of the Philippine National Police by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs and Finance.
988, an act to provide guidelines for the installation of the closed-circuit television video and the procedure for access to the images by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Public Order and Dangerous Drugs.
989, an act mandating the creation of a School Disaster Management Committee to conduct safety drills for emergency situations in all schools by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on National Defense and Security and Education, Arts, and Culture.
990, an act expanding the powers and functions of the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board to provide for the regulation of video games and outdoor media, amending for the purpose Presidential Decree number 1986 by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Public Information and Mass Media.
991, an act amending sections 2 and 3B of Republic Act number 8794, otherwise known as an act imposing a motor vehicle user's charge on owners of all types of motor vehicles and for other purposes by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Public Works and Ways and Means.
992, an act establishing a human trafficking prevention education program for the youth and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Youth, Education, Arts, and Culture, and Finance.
993, an act expanding the application of the Local Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Fund by amending Republic Act number 10121, otherwise known as the Philippine Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Act of 2010 by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on National Defense and Security.
994, an act establishing the National Traffic Enforcement and Management Center, defining its powers, functions, and duties, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Public Services, Ways and Means, and Finance.
995, an act regulating placement and content on billboards, including their support structures, by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committee on Public Works.
996, an act instituting inclusive education and establishing special education centers for children and youth with special needs in all public schools divisions providing for standards and guidelines, and appropriating funds therefore by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Education, Arts and Culture, Women, Children, Family Relations and Gender Equality, Ways and Means and Finance.
997, an act providing for the employment of qualified lifeguards at all public swimming pools and bathing facilities and providing penalties for violations therefore by Senator Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Trade, Commerce and Entrepreneurship and Local Government.
998, an act modifying the compensation and position classification system of civilian government personnel and the base pay of schedule of military and uniformed personnel in the government by Senator Ligarda.
To the Committees on Civil Service, Government Reorganization and Professional Regulation and Finance.
999, an act granting the President his last executive branch of government emergency powers to manage, mitigate, and solve the traffic and congestion crisis across the Philippines, to expeditiously and effectively implement measures that shall provide real lasting solutions as well as the earliest respite from traffic and congestion, and for other purposes by Senator Cayetano.
To the Committees on Public Services, Constitutional Amendments and Revision of Codes and Finance.
And Senate Bill number 1000, an act providing for the Magna Carta of the out-of-school youth by Senator Win Gatchalian.
To the Committees on Youth and Finance. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. We would also like to acknowledge guests of Senator Villar, Mayor Tony Carolino of Santa Maria, Laguna, together with former Mayor Cindy Carolino of Laguna.
Welcome to the Senate.
Mr. President, the Chair of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources, Senator Cynthia Villar, would like to manifest the designation of Senator Loren Legarda and Senator J.V. Ejercito as vice chairpersons of the said committee. For the record, Mr. President.
The designation of the previously named members, Senators Legarda and Ejercito, of the Committee on Environment and Natural Resources as chairpersons is noted.
And finally, Mr. President, as per the request of Senator Ralph Recto, with the consent of the body, I move that we switch the primary and secondary referral of Senate Bill 264, a bill on micro, small, and medium enterprises, from the Committee on Government Corporations and Public Enterprises to the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies, and vice versa, primary and secondary. Well, Mr. President, after they have gone over the provision of the bill, it appears that the measure relates more on matters and concerns that would affect the functions and operations of DBP as a bank or as a financial institution, thus putting merit on the request made by the minority leader. So I so move, Mr. President.
There is a motion to change the primary and secondary referral of Senate Bill number 264, now making the Committee on Banks, Financial Institutions, and Currencies as the primary committee, and the Committee on Government, Corporations, and Public Enterprises as the secondary committee. Is there any objection? Senator Gordon?
I'm sorry, Mr. President, I did not get the referral. Which proposal is that?
Senate Bill 264, Mr. President. This is micro and small medium enterprises. Senate Bill 264.
Do you need time, Senator Gordon, to go over it? We can declare a recess.
Thank you, Mr. President. I intend to take a look at it before we...
Move to suspend, Mr. President.
Session suspended. Focus CA. Pag-adjourn na lang. Pag-adjourn na lang. Sige.
Of course, thank you.
We're ready to resume, Mr. President.
Session is resumed.
After consultation between the chairman of the Banks Committee and the chairman of the sorry, chairman of the GOCCs, they have agreed that the primary committee be the banks, Mr. President.
So the motion stands. The motion has already been stated. The manifestation of Senator Gordon was not an objection. So any objection? There being none, the motion is approved.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we adjourn the session until 3 o'clock.
Senator Gordon is recognized.
I would just like to make, perhaps it's a point of order or a point of clarification or courtesies. There's no such thing as a point of courtesy. There's a point of hunger. The next time that we have something like this, when we have to transfer the assignment of a particular committee, may I request that the chairs of the respective committees affected be properly given enough notice. There's no problem in this case, but there could be other problems later on, because we would like to be able to take time to take a look at whether it was properly referred to. There is no intent to disrespect anybody here. It's just in the interest of good order and, in the interest of our friendship, our relationship here, which I would not want to threaten by surprises.
Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well taken. We will give instructions to the Rules Secretariat to make sure that the proper committee chairs or the committees are well informed of any such action from here on in, Mr. President.
Because at that point in time, before the motion was made, that bill was already referred to the to the Committee on Government Corporations.
Yes,
so
and we were
correct.
just in receipt of a letter from Senator Recto
Yes.
seeking the
So we should really involve the
Yes.
concerned committee chair.
well
Majority Leader.
taken,
Thank you.
Mr. President. We
Thank
will
you,
do so.
Senator Gordon, for that.
And I thank the majority floor leader and the
Suggestion,
Senate
yes.
President, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. With that, there being no other matter, I move to adjourn the session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, August 17, 2016.
Is there any objection? There being none, session is adjourned until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, August 17, 2016.